The following episode contains both mental and physical abuse, as well as death and sensitive topics. Continue at your own risk. Enjoy. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Soft Whispers. Today we'll be looking at The Dying Dreams of Happiness, Episode 2, Into the Swamp, which is the story of a young boy named Luke. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the first episode of The Dying Dreams of Happiness, I would recommend you to pause this episode and go check it out. Now, if you are still here, let's do a quick recap. Luke falls into a coma by trying to save his younger brother Tim and lands in the afterlife beyond the skies where two magical owls come to take him to heaven. Now Luke defies their wishes and decides to embark into a huge journey to find his body and finally be able to wake up. On his first mission, he has to go through a magical kingdom called the Evergreen Kingdom where he meets Billy Bob and while on the verge of death discovers new magical powers. Now we last left Luke when he was on the edge of nothingness and jumps. Without further ado, this is episode 2, Into the Swamp. Enjoy. As soon as he opened his eyes, he noticed he was drowning in black murky water that was hard to swim out of. Every time he would kick and try to swim out of there, he would just get stuck in more dense moss murky water. Said Luke, while gasping for air. Where am I? Luke looked around, pulling himself into somewhat semi-solid land. He looked around and he saw huge trees. Mangroves so tall they looked like skyscrapers, blocking almost all of the sunlight, with only a few rays of light making it to the surface. Where am I? Thought Luke, while standing up and looking around. This was awfully quiet. No birds singing in the trees or fish or anything splashing in the water. This world seemed motionless. Just frozen in time with nothing there but Luke, every breath he took acting as a clock, taking time in a timeless world. So, he looked at his wrist and noticed his bracelet tip kept moving, pointing at different directions, from left to right to around him in circles. I have to be in a magnetic field or something, thought Luke. Then all of a sudden a gush of air ran past Luke. His wings came out protecting him from the impact, but he could see what looked like an animal running on two legs running past him, then only shadows in the distance. What are these things? Animals? Humans? Were they running towards Luke to attack him? No. These weren't running towards him, they were running away from something. But what? Then Luke saw out in the distance what looked like a huge hairy man, almost monkey-like, swinging from tree to tree, almost flying and a dark shadow falling behind. Every second that passed, that slim shadow got closer and closer to the hairy figure, till they both vanished behind a tree, but the hairy shadow was no longer seen. A shiver froze Luke. That figure must have been at least 10 feet tall. How or what could have possibly been able to defeat it? Luke started to run with all of his strength away from the shadows, but no matter how much he would run, he would end up in a similar area, as if he was running around in circles, seeing from the corner of his eyes how a long figure kept devouring huge animals, snapping them as if they were toothpicks one after another. It didn't matter if they tried to escape using the trees or hiding in the black murky water, the shadow would find them. The quiet and quaint world quickly turned into a living hell, with the air filled with screams of agony and death. Fuck this stupid swamp, said Luke, while he expanded his wings to take off, and with his supersonic speed he started to fly towards the top of these enormous trees. That's what he needed to think straight. Surely whatever that creature was not going to be able to reach him at the top. It didn't matter how big or how quick that creature was, surely it couldn't fly, right? Luke would be safe above the trees. But about as soon as Luke was about to reach the top, he felt a thrashing pain as if a 200-pound sledgehammer crushed into his spine at about 500 miles an hour. But before he could even let out a sound, he felt a pressure so strong around his leg and he was flung back at the bottom with such a force that at the moment of impact, if it weren't for his wings protecting his body, he probably would have been decimated into a slob with only pieces of skin and bones being left into a mushy jello-like form. How is this even possible? The abyss, the strength of a black hole couldn't stop me. I guess that's the end of my journey. Mama, Tim, I have failed you, Mama. I have failed you, said Luke as he was ready to give up and getting ready to accept his fate, drowning deeper and deeper into the murky water. Then all of a sudden, the same pressure grabbed him by the leg and pulled him out of the water. As Luke was hanging upside down, coughing up the water he inhaled, he could see what caught him. A 50-foot python that looked straight out of hell, each scale bigger than a bulletproof impact shield. Its color between green and black and its eyes gleaming with nothing but darkness.
You sure are a funny-looking creature,
slithered the snake, in a rough, chaotic voice.
You're too small to be a beast creature. And these wings, I've never seen these types of wings before. Who are you? And what are you doing in my swamp if not to become my meat?
Said the snake in disbelief, somewhat curious. He had never seen a creature like Luke before. As the snake dropped Luke on the floor, slithering around him, not giving him any space to escape.
My name is Luke,
said Luke, while coughing up a mixture of murky black water and blood.
I see. So you're a Luke. I've never eaten a Luke before. You are quite soft, but these wings are quite hard and can cause me indigestion. Are there more Lukes like you in my swamp?
Asked the snake.
I don't know. I came by myself,
said Luke, while noticing he was feeling better and was thinking about how was he going to escape to the top of those trees.
I see.
The snake pulled out his tongue and licked Luke, going into an orgasmic rage, destroying trees, creating waves while splashing water. Thinking it has never tasted something as good as a Luke. When Luke noticed that it was distracted and had let go of him, he blasted towards the top of the trees.
No, Luke. You see, you don't leave if I don't tell you to.
Luke saw how the massive snake stopped him right in his tracks. In 1 second, its eyes were staring straight at Luke, right above him, clenching his fists, grinding his teeth, knowing there was nothing that Luke could do. Then, all of a sudden, Luke flew into the trees away from the snake, but he hadn't even flown a few feet when he felt his wings being crushed.
No, Luke. You are mine now. It's all over, Luke. I am your master now,
said the snake while laughing hysterically, smelling Luke almost succumbing to an orgasm.
You want to see the top of those trees so much, don't you, Luke?
Said the snake while pulling Luke to the top of the trees with such a force that a few of his feathers had to catch up with him. When he finally got to the top, all Luke could see was miles and miles of trees, miles and miles of endless swamp. Luke knew he was screwed. As far as he could see, the swamp extended at least over 1,000 miles. And there were no villages, no mountains, just swamps and more swamps.
You have a nice view,
said Luke, chuckling out of fear. The snake started to laugh and slithered through the tops of those trees at an immense speed that Luke almost fainted because of the lack of oxygen. And in 15 minutes came to an abrupt stop, and Luke could see it. Luke could see a vast ocean in front of him.
You see, Luke, this is where my swamp ends. Now me and you are gonna play a little game, because luckily for you, I just devoured a lot of beast creatures. And every bite I wanted to be special. So this is what I'll do. I'll give you 3 days to try to escape. We'll start in the middle of my swamp, and there's only one rule. And that rule is, you can't use these wings to fly away. And if you try,
said the snake while smirking, then threw Luke about 100 feet up in the air, and before Luke could even reach his peak, the snake recoiled on the top of the tree and sprang up, destroying the tree with the force created. It flew past Luke, catching him on his way up, saying,
I will catch you and devour you. You will not be safe up here, or on the land or water. So you break my rule and bye-bye, Luke. No 3 days for you.
Then holding Luke while they descended and slithering over the top of these trees, while back to the center of the swamp where the snake had its home. As soon as they descended, Luke noticed a massive hole in the center of the swamp that looked like a cave. And when they got to the bottom, he saw that the snake had several beast creatures, from humanoid monkeys to humanoid birds, and even massive human like alligators that tripled Luke in size. All of them locked up in huge cages and body parts lying around everywhere.
You have to be careful with these beasts,
said the snake.
They won't doubt killing you even for a second,
said the snake while opening up a cage. Then an alligator lunged at Luke with his mouth wide open, ready to kill him. So Luke's wings entered into battle, deflecting every slash, every attack.
I told you these fuckers wouldn't doubt in killing you.
With every attack that Luke had to defend himself, the more tired he got. Then, the alligator feinted a slash, but instead spun around him and then used his toe to smack Luke across the floor. And then plunged over Luke with his mouth wide open, ready to finish him. But then, Luke remembered what Billy Bob said, that even something as blunt as a bullet with enough force becomes lethal. So Luke called back his wings, and instead of defending, he wrapped the feathers around his arm and punched it inside of the alligator's mouth, and a huge impact was heard. And then, both collapsed. Luke proceeded to pull out his bloody arm out of the gator's mouth. What he had done was he wrapped the feathers around his arm to protect him from the impact of the bite. And then, he used the tip of his wings to plunge it with all his force, shooting it inside the alligator at lightning speed, pulverizing his insides, therefore ending its life.
Your 3 days have already started,
said the snake while staring at Luke straight in the eyes. Luke started running towards the entrance of the cave, trying his best not to get lost. After a while, he got to a huge ascent that was so slippery to climb up, so he spread his wings, but as soon as he was going to take off to fly to the top of the hole, he heard the snake's voice in his head saying, "No flying, that's my only rule."
How am I supposed to get out of here if I can't even fly?
Thought Luke. So he focused and used his night vision to see if there was another exit, but to no avail. He tried to manipulate his feathers so that they could stay afloat and he could use them as a stepping ladder or something. But that attempt also failed, because eventually they would lose their effect and reunite with his wings, making him fall and bash himself against the rocks. Still, he was so enraged that he stabbed the cave wall with all of his strength and noticed that the feather stayed encrusted into the wall. So he took a few steps back, and with all his might he started throwing feathers towards the wall, creating a makeshift way up. And so he began to climb up, pulling out the feathers below him till finally he made it out. Outside the cave, he concentrated very hard to think the best way out, and remembered that as soon as they left the ocean, Luke had left a few feathers scattered along the way so that he could find his way back to the ocean. But there was no way of knowing how to get back to them. So he remembered his compass and did his best to not recall those few feathers he had left out in the distance. And as the compass appeared, a beam of light pointed towards the nearest feather. But the compass kept pointing for some reason towards the inside of the cave. Was the portal to find his body inside that cave? Should he go back and look for it? But if he appeared his wings again, the feathers he had scattered out for sure would reunite, and then he would have no way of knowing his way out of this swamp. So, Luke, against the better judgment of the compass and with no wings, and only with a couple of feathers to defend himself with, ventured into the swamp. It was getting darker than usual, and the little light that was coming through started to dim. It must be nighttime, thought Luke. As he started shivering, it was definitely getting colder, and Luke was still damp from being underwater. and for the first time there, he felt hungry. But what was he supposed to eat? Nothing here looked like food, and there were a lot of animals out in the distance. If anything, Luke was the food. Luke spotted a few animals out in the distance that looked like the humanoids from the cave, and Luke knew that if a herd spotted him, that would be the end of it all. They were dangerous, and Luke wanted to stay away from them as much as possible, so he started cutting off a branch and started fishing, turning one of his feathers into a light string with a hook attached on the end of it, just how Billy Bob had taught him. Luke remembered seeing a few fish deep in the murky water, so after an hour of resting, waiting for something to bite, he finally felt a tug. He had caught a fish, a huge fish, at least 4 feet long. It shocked Luke how everything in the swamp was so large. It made him feel small. Luke thought for a quick second to start a fire, but someone would surely see the flames. The last thing he wanted was to call attention to himself, so he used a feather to scale it clean and then just started to eat it raw. "This must be like that sushi stuff they eat at fancy restaurants," Luke said. After he was done, he threw the remains into the water and kept walking along in the night till he found his first feather. "This must mean I'm getting closer," thought Luke. Then, all of a sudden, he heard noises coming from behind him. So quickly, while using his feathers, he climbed up a tree and found a hole in the tree where he observed how a humanoid rat was running for his life, being chased by a pack of alligators. He heard a noise coming from above him. He gasped, making all the alligators stop in place to see where that sound came from. But as soon as he was about to scream, a humanoid monkey placed his hand over his mouth, saying, "Don't make a sound, or we will both be dead." Luke nodded his head, recognizing that this was the monkey that had ran past him earlier. Luke kept quiet, as they both waited for the pack to leave. Then, Luke tried to descend towards the bottom of the tree when the monkey stopped him. "You have to look beyond what you see." Pointing his finger towards the water, he saw that the pack was lurking underneath the water, looking straight up at them. "They know we're here. It would be best if we wait till the morning. Hopefully, someone will pass and they'll go after them and we'll be able to get away." "I can't wait till the morning," said Luke, thinking if he waited, that would mean he would only have 2 days left, and seeing that he only got 1 out of 4 feathers that he had left scattered in the swamp, that meant he was nowhere close to reaching the ocean. As Luke spoke to the monkey, he found out that he came from a city outside the swamp. In fact, everyone did, including the snake. He also said that the snake happened to be one of the 4 generals in the Eagle's King's army, but that one day he went berserk, and with his most loyal soldiers he tried to rule over the kingdom, but were defeated by the king and sent out to live in the swamp, where nothing could survive. So seeing that the rest of his soldiers were also snakes, he started to kill them and eventually eat them, and that's how he got so big and powerful. "So, what did you do to get here?" asked Luke. Well, you see, this is where the kingdom sends its criminals, anything from a pickpocketer to a killer who committed treason. Most of the people here weren't bad, but the hunger and desperation from the swamp turns them into the most wretched monsters." "So, what did you do to get here?" asked the monkey, which Luke responded, showing him his compass. "I see. So the red arrow points towards your feathers by the ocean, but what does the white arrow point to?" asked the monkey, curiously. "Well, you see, I'm on a mission. I don't know where, but the white arrow points me to where I'm supposed to go. It's what led me to the swamp. But I don't know what's wrong with it. It keeps pointing me in the direction of that serpent's cave," answered Luke. Then the monkey started laughing. Well, that sucks for you. You see, in the cave is the exit to the swamp, the entrance to the Eagle Kingdom. Whenever we are exiled, they throw us down a cave, the Serpent's Cave. So when we wander and eventually find the serpent, he'll lock us up, torture us, but sometimes he'll get bored and let us free.
so that he can have his fun hunting us down. You see, I've been running for close to 2 months now, and was about to get slaughtered if it wasn't for you," answered the monkey, somewhat happy but with a depressed voice. "So, if I can ask, what did you do?" asked Luke. The monkey's grin faded. "What did I do?" he said. You could tell he was upset. "Yeah, if you don't want to tell me, it's okay. I get it, past and stuff." The monkey nudged and opened his hands and said, "Nothing. I did absolutely nothing," said the monkey while holding his hands to his face, crying. "The only other person who has heard this story is the Eagle King, but we're going to die anyways, so why not? So my wife and my boy were sick, so I didn't bring them to work with me that day, to work the field. But before heading home, I decided to make a quick run to the city to buy them some medicine with the doctor. But on my way back, my mate said to stop for a quick drink. And of course, I thought a quick drink wouldn't hurt, so I don't know if I had too much to drink, but it got late, and all I could remember was I tumbled in the house, and my wife and kid were dead, bleeding on the floor. And as I rushed to help them, I felt someone hit me on the back of my head. And when I woke up, I was in a cell, and the guards informed me that I'd gotten drunk and I'd killed my wife and my boy. But when I told them I would never do that, I just went to get medicine. They said the only bottle they found was the one I was using to drink and I'd broken and lashed them with. Nobody believed me, so the next day I was thrown into the cave, and now I'm just counting the days to when I can be reunited with my wife and hold my boy in my arms. But the only thing keeping me from throwing myself into the gators or the serpent is to find who did this to me and make them pay." "Well, I guess you won't be able to make them pay if we stay stuck up here or get devoured down there now, will we?" said Luke, while finishing tying up the string he had made earlier to 2 feathers, and with all his strength he stabbed one of them to the tree where he was sitting, and the other he threw towards another tree, a makeshift zipline. "You cocksuckers can't reach us up here," said Luke, as he zipped from one tree to another. "Come on, it's safe," said Luke to the monkey. Then, the monkey used his long arms to swing over the zip line, and when the gators finally noticed, they came out of the pond with their spears and started to throw them at Luke and the monkey. "We're fucked," said the monkey. "Not yet. Have faith," said Luke, as he sent another feather flying towards the next tree, and they kept zipping through the trees. "I don't feel well, Luke," said the monkey, all tired off. Then Luke turned around and saw that a spear had impaled the monkey in his shoulder, barely missing his neck. Luke, you go get to the ocean. I'll finally be able to be with my loved ones," said the monkey, as he pulled out the spear and jumped towards the ground to buy Luke some time. But Luke wasn't going to let him die. Yes, he was afraid of the herd of gators, and yes, he had to get to the ocean. But in that moment, he searched within himself and he found his inner strength and pulled that shit out. And his motivation overcame his fear. He was not going to give up on him. Maybe the world had given up on him, but he wasn't. So Luke pulled all his strength and went diving first towards the bottom. He called all his feathers, only leaving one. But Luke had his wings back, and he was ready to fight. Finish him! As Luke landed, the impact and force that his wings created made the gators get pushed back, but they quickly recovered and circled them. But as Luke was about to grab the monkey and simply fly out of there, he felt a cold stare, and looked to his right. Using his long-distance sight, he saw the serpent staring straight at him, getting ready to recoil and lunge at Luke. And in his mind, he heard the words of the serpent.
the only unbreakable rule: do not fly. So he created a huge barricade with his wings against the 6 gators. We gotta figure something out. I don't think I can keep this up for much longer. How sharp are those feathers? Asked the monkey. Not much. They're mostly for defense, and only I can use them. But you said you can transform them, right? Said the monkey while raising his spear. And Luke knew exactly what he wanted to say. So with one of his feathers, he put it on the tip of the spear and transformed it into another tip for the other side of the spear. Then Luke looked at the simp and said, "There will be a day we might die, my friend. But trust me, that day will not be today." Luke let out a huge war cry. Then he used all of his feathers to knock down the gators, jumping into the air, and with his wings he created an arm shield. Like he did before, only this time he had created the tips of the feathers to be as sharp as spears. 6v2. This isn't going to be easy. The gators roared, hissing as they attacked Luke with their spears. Luke avoided those spears, swiftly breaking them and fighting back as hard as he could. But this was not easy. Luke had sustained a lot of injuries, and when he checked on his friend, he noticed he was bleeding out, now swinging his spear aimlessly, shaking, mostly due to shock. But the fight wasn't over. 3 gators still remained, and Luke's arm was badly wounded due to 2 gators trying to bite his arm off. Luckily for Luke, they met their end, being impaled by Luke's fist. What now, Luke? There's no way we're going to make it out of here. This is just hopeless. The gators quickly circled around, picking up their fallen comrades and started to devour them. With every bite they took, their wounds would heal, their strength would return, and all 3 of them began to bulk up. The leader stared at Luke, and then his comrades, and then the monkey said, "It's all over, Luke. Run! I'll try to buy you some time," said the monkey, while getting in front of Luke, waving his spear radically. "No, we will not give up. As long as we are breathing, we can keep fighting. Don't you see, Luke? They don't even have a scratch. They are way stronger. We don't stand a chance. Trust me, my friend. I told you that there will be a day we will die, but that day will not be today," said Luke, as he grabbed the monkey with one hand, and with the other he kept repelling the gator's attacks. This would be so easy if I could fly. Then Luke remembered maybe he wasn't allowed to fly, but the snake never said he couldn't float, like he did at the bottom of the golden staircase. So he concentrated and started to float at supersonic speed, till the gators that were following him close by all of a sudden came to a halt. In front of Luke was a dead swamp. The water was gangrenous, screamed of death, and carcasses filled both the waters and the land. "Where are we?" said Luke. The monkey just sighed and said, The dead swamp. We can't go out there," said the monkey. "It's called the dead swamp because nothing survives in the water. Beast creatures come here when they're tired of living, to stop living." But Luke could see the last one of his feathers out on the edge. "We're almost at the sea, my friend. Let's keep going. I can see my last feather." The monkey tilted his head. Hope was in reaching distance, but at the same time, so far. "I can't, Luke. Nobody makes it out." "I got you, buddy," said Luke, while carrying the monkey on his back. "We will make it to the ocean, you'll see," said Luke, as he slowly started to descend into the gangrenous swamp. The gangrenous swamp wasn't that deep, but his struggle was not only how heavy the monkey was, but that every time Luke would touch bones or flesh off one of those carcasses, all those painful memories of the ones past would come rushing towards him. Their pain, their memories. He could live their lives, their fears, and experience their deaths. Too many deaths to count. Luke's body was twitching, almost convulsing due to the pain. So many deaths. How was this even possible? But he had to keep going. He couldn't give up now. On his back, the monkey had dropped one of his arms, and in his mind, he saw a beautiful vision. It was his wife and his boy not working in the fields, but in a beautiful flower field. As he walked towards them with his arms filled with food and his pockets filled with gold, as he saw his boy running towards him in open arms. "I missed you, Daddy. I missed you too, kiddo," said the monkey, dropping all his food and all his gold to run and hug his family. As Luke made it out of the swamp, he grabbed his feather and using his long-distance sight, he could see out in the distance the ocean. "We're almost there!" But the monkey did not respond. As soon as Luke was on solid soil, he dropped to the floor exhausted. "Hey, we made it. We're almost there. It's only about a half a day away," said Luke. But nobody answered. "Hey," said Luke to the monkey. But the monkey was no longer in that world. Luke looked over and said, "Say hi to your wife and kid for me," as he laid the monkey against a tree to finally rest. Luke kept walking towards the ocean, hopeful he still had a whole day to get there and he would be able to fly to safety. Every step Luke took, he would be closer to freedom. His body still trembled with agony to experience all those lives, all those deaths, so painful. But he kept on going. As it got dark, Luke was about to start climbing up a tree. As he got one of his feathers out to start climbing, he noticed his feathers looked a bit darker. Probably because it was getting late, thought Luke. He hadn't seen a single animal since arriving at the dead swamp, but just in case, he climbed to the top, just to be safe. It was very quiet that night, and only the sounds of the ocean carried over by the wind could be heard. Luke closed his eyes and remembered how his dad used to take him and his brother Tim to the pond. The water splashing in the summertime, the fish swimming around, and afterwards, his father driving them to get ice cream. "Looks like there's no animals at all," said Luke. After a few hours of no movement in pitch-black darkness, Luke descended to continue his journey towards the ocean. As the sun started to rise, Luke had finally made it. He was free. He extended his wings and took off towards the skies, leaving a huge crater in his place. Luke flew for hours and hours, but nothing. He didn't see anything. No land, nothing, but he kept flying till it almost got dark. Finally, he collapsed due to exhaustion. The waves had carefully carried Luke all the way back to the shore. By the time he opened up his eyes, he thought, "I must be on new land." So he walked around the beachside and he noticed that huge crater he had left when he took off at supersonic speed. How is this even possible? I must have flown for at least 6 to 7 hours. How am I still in this swamp? So Luke quickly took off in a different direction this time. In pitch black darkness, he couldn't see a thing, but he just kept flying and flying and flying, but he couldn't see anything. No life, no land, no nothing. Till eventually again he collapsed. The sun was starting to come out when Luke opened his eyes for the second time and he noticed he was still on that beach. How is this even possible, thought Luke. Till an idea came across his mind. Luke thought, I'm at the ocean. Part of the deal was that I was going to be safe if I made it to the ocean. So he quickly took off straight up in a straight line. He must have been flying for at least 30 minutes when he finally thought, I must be high enough. After those minutes of flying at supersonic speed, he noticed at the top, above the clouds, above everything, that it was an island. That's right. The swamp was completely surrounded by oceans. There was nothing. Nothing lied beyond the water. He couldn't see anything. So Luke descended and thought of a plan. On the edge of the swamp, Luke thought to himself, the snake has to be looking for me. It has to be looking. 3 days have passed. It's hunting time. He's got to be looking for me. What Luke thought was he's going to fly as high as he can, the snake's going to be looking for him in the surrounding edges of the swamp, and he's going to take advantage using his compass. He's going to fly straight towards the snake's cave and make it out of there into Eagle Kingdom. There's where the portal is, there's where his body's going to be. Luke's going to make it out. And so he did. Luke took up into the skies, and when he finally made it to his peak where he couldn't go any higher up, he dashed straight towards the center of the swamp. After a few hours, his compass told him finally he was at the center of the swamp, and he used his vision to see the snake wasn't there. So he quickly descended towards the cave and made his way inside. But as he was about to enter the cave, he saw there were a lot of beast creatures there. Not locked up in their cages, but chained up. They could still get to him though. What was he supposed to do? He didn't have the energy to fight off all these beast creatures. There were some there that Luke had never even seen before. Some of the new ones were huge. Who knows what power they had? So Luke carefully made his way through them when he noticed something. None of them even looked at Luke. None of them acknowledged him. It's as if he was invisible. Luke had his wings out, protecting him, ready to go in case of an emergency. But because he was nervous, he almost bumped into one. But he was right in front of the beast creature, and the beast creature didn't even acknowledge Luke. What's going on? Thought Luke. It didn't matter. He was going to make it out of there. After going through endless dead ends and endless tunnels, he finally saw a light coming out of the other side of the tunnel. This must be the Eagle Kingdom, thought Luke. So as he walked his way there, he noticed that on the other side where the light was, there were these two huge armored eagles with their spears making an X blocking the exit and the entrance to the cave. How am I going to make it out? Thought Luke. These eagles are so powerful, they overrule the serpents, they overrule all these beast creatures. That must mean their power must be immense. So Luke crawled underneath the spears, and surprisingly enough, he made it out. The Eagle Kingdom was so beautiful. A variety of different colored suns aligned the skies. The fresh breeze smelled sweet. And everything in this kingdom was huge. But Luke was curious. How was it that those eagles couldn't see him? And most importantly, why was his compass telling him to go back to the swamp? None of this made sense. So Luke decided just to ask. He got in front of one of those eagles and just asked him, "Hey, where am I?" The eagles looked at each other confused. They could hear Luke, but they couldn't see him. They quickly pointed their spears and just started swinging them around, not hitting anything. Luke quickly just backed off and said, "Hey," and then thought to himself, "Wait a second. Could it be that they can't see me?" And then he started to remember all that pain, all those deaths, all that agony. It could have been possible that something in these beast creatures' blood activated something to make him blend in with the swamp. It had to be. But the question still remained in Luke's mind. Why? Why was this compass leading him towards the swamp? So Luke finally decided to follow the compass and made his way back towards the swamp. Back inside the cave, he started to follow the direction of his compass, which led him. He started to follow it, and in the distance, he heard loud crashing, loud banging, destruction, total chaos. What Luke saw out in the distance, what his compass had pointed him to all this time, Luke could not believe. It was the serpent.
"You think you can hide from me, boy? Well, you can't, motherfucker,"
said the snake as it kept bashing, destroying things, frantically looking for Luke. But how was this possible? Luke tried his best to escape. He tried his best to run away from him and get to safety. But what was the compass trying to even tell him? And then Luke knew. He vanished all his powers and said, "Hey, I'm right here." The snake quickly turned around and said, "There you are." Furious, it lunged over Luke, but Luke didn't even move a muscle. As the snake jumped into the air and descended upon Luke with its mouth wide open, Luke just said, "Fucking compass, you gotta be fucking kidding me? Get up, soldier! You will not die on me! Do you understand? That's a direct order! Luke opened his eyes and saw gunshots flying everywhere. Oh no! He couldn't move, he couldn't feel his legs. What's going on? What's happening? I hope you enjoyed following me along in this multi-episode series of The Dying Dreams of Happiness. If you did, then by all means follow me into our next episode, Into the Deep Space, where Luke will have to learn to work with a team in order to survive. Will he be able to survive? As far as we've seen Luke, he uses brute force and brute strength to just smash through all his problems. Will he be able to do that in this world, where strength isn't necessarily the solution? Will he finally be able to find his body, or will he die trying? Will his teammates be able to help him? Or will they betray him? We'll find out in the next episode of The Dying Dreams of Happiness. But before you go, for all those short story lovers, I have coming up very shortly, Into the Void. Into the Void is a story where all those negative and powerful emotions go to die. They go to this devastating world where only the strongest survive, and our protagonist is involved in a situation where her emotions are so negative and so traumatic that they take over her body, pushing out her soul. And this beautiful, noble soul now has to survive in a world filled with emotions. Emotions such as agony, death, depression, the worst emotions possible you could see, and they're all out here to devour each other. But most importantly, the last beautiful thing in that world, her soul. Will she make it out alive? If you liked the episode, then please follow as I try to upload as quickly as possible. My name is Michael, and I am your narrator. Sweet dreams.